Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to our first seminar of the year for our COFFIES Seminar series. We are very happy to kick off our first seminar and kick off 2025 with a special arranged seminar on topic of mental health. So we cared about mental health and cared about well-being of our community. So we will have this special theme seminar today. And I'm honored to introduce our speaker, Romina Nikoukar, today. Dr. Romina Nikoukar is a senior scientist at Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory. She is Deputy Director for Galactic Cosmic Rays Team for SHIELD Drive Center. She also serves as Deputy Project Scientist for the timed mission. The timed stands for thermosphere, ionosphere, mesosphere, energetics, and dynamics. Romina's primary research focuses on observational studies of the space environment. This includes radio and optical remote sensing of the ionosphere, thermosphere, and plasmasphere, and also energetic neutral imaging of the magnetosphere, and in situ investigations of energetic particles in the heliosphere. Additionally, she contributes to the development of space instrumentation, supporting innovative mission concepts designed to advance our understanding of the space environment and improve our ability to nowcast and forecast its variability. Beyond science, Romina is deeply committed to promoting and prioritizing mental health in the science and work community. Today, she will give a talk about raising awareness on mental health in heliophysics community. Let's thank to Romina again, and I will pass it to Romina.
Thank you very much, Riju. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and meet a lot of you COFFIES people. I know people from SHIELD and I know people from CGS, but I have never interacted much with the COFFIES Drive Center. So it's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for having me. So let me share my screen now. And you can see it?
Yes, it's your
all right.
title page now. Yeah.
Okay. So as Riju mentioned, I'm going to talk about the mental health in the heliophysics community. And the reason that I'm doing this is that throughout my career, I have experienced and witnessed others' experience challenges with mental health, including stress, anxiety, and constant pressure. As a woman and as an immigrant, I have at times faced additional mental health struggles, and these have made these challenges even more difficult for me personally. Mental health is a deeply personal and emotional topic for me, and until very recently, I didn't feel comfortable sharing my struggles and talking about mental health, my own mental health. Instead, I often hid them, sometimes to the detriment of my of my physical health, a cycle that, of course, is far from healthy. So facing these situations, being a scientist, I decided to approach this as a science project by educating myself on mental health and mental well-being and exploring strategies to maintain my mental health. There is a wealth of literature on this subject that we can draw from to better understand and address these issues. So here I'm pleased to share some of what I have learned and share with you how these insights have positively impacted my own well-being. I hope that some of these may prove helpful to you as well. So why talk about the mental health? Before I start, I have to say that some of this information, minimize this. Some of this information that I'm going to present here is included in the Frontiers paper that are noted here in this QR code. And this basically marked the beginning of my journey into raising awareness on mental health. As we know, mental health is a central part of overall well-being, which influences every aspect of our lives, from personal fulfillment to professional success. Maintaining a healthy work-life balance is not just a personal goal, but a necessity for sustaining long-term productivity and satisfaction. However, while a career in research and academia can be intellectually rewarding and deeply enriching, it also comes from its unique challenges that could significantly impact our mental health at any career stage. Unfortunately, though, mental health remains a stigmatized topic. Several studies have shown that 20% of people struggle with mental health issues, yet many hide their challenges because they fear for discrimination from peers or supervisors, or that they are being viewed as incompetent and incapable of performing their work and or completing their studies. So in this context, I would like to highlight a few of the specific challenges within our science community that adversely affect our mental health. Well, the first one that comes to mind is, of course, poor work-life balance. Poor work-life balance is often exacerbated by workaholism and an always-on culture. This isn't just about long hours, but it's about the inability to disconnect from work and insufficient time for personal work. Work-life balance doesn't need to mean a strict 50-50 balance split. In my view, it varies from person to person. So when we are pushed out of our own equilibrium, that is when the imbalance occurs and leading to negative effects on well-being. The next one that is prevalent in our field, unfortunately, is the power imbalances. Many individuals experience pressure from advisors, supervisors, principal investigators, and sometimes navigate toxic team dynamics. This environment can occasionally escalate to workplace harassment or bullying, and creating overwhelming stress and diminishing quality of life. The next one is fear of missing out. This is a very widespread issue, especially among early career researchers who feel compelled to say yes to every opportunity that comes along in order to build their own visibilities. Often these projects or tasks are unfunded and require additional effort on personal time, which contributes to stress and mental pressure. And all of these things, of course, would bring burnout. Burnout is a complex phenomenon that manifests differently for different people. For me, it stemmed from constant pressure to undertake more responsibilities and to achieve more. A feeling of being overwhelmed and having no control in what I'm doing. Burnout, and of course, no joy. Sometimes the joy is gone in the work that I do. Also, burnout often brings mental and emotional exhaustion, cynicism, and reduced professional efficacy. So a few years ago, I experienced these symptoms without realizing that I was going through what I was going through. I felt all of these emotions, and it was at the time of pandemic. No surprise there. It was only later that I found that there is a name for all of these feelings, and that is burnout. So I decided to educate myself on burnout a little bit more. Back in the fall, I participated in a National Academy's workshop on impact of burnout on gender equity in STEM fields. And that's the QR code that you see on the top of the page. It was an extremely educational workshop, and I recommend that you go to visit that page and look at all the recordings. Everything is in there. All the presentations that were given, they're all there. It was highly educational for me. So please feel free to look that up. But what was discussed there was that they started with a basic definition of burnout and what it means, the misconceptions about burnout. Because we tend to be in our community, we tend to use speak of burnout very colloquially. Everyone means a different thing for burnout. The things that I presented before is my own personal things and what I read about it. But basically, the World Health Organization definition of burnout is that it's a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So there is a stress, there's a chronic stress that has not been successfully managed. And that's what results in burnout. So what they discussed was that burnout is not a disease, it's a symptom that we have to deal with. And in order to address burnout, we should not ask a who question, who is going through burnout. We should ask a what question, which means what causes burnout. So that's an important distinction that we have to remind ourselves about. Burnout, of course, is a multifaceted phenomenon. It's not solely an individual problem, but it is also an occupational challenge. So there are different levels to burnout that we need to consider. And also, burnout impacts varies depending on our gender, career stage, socioeconomic status. So it can happen to anyone, but it proportionally affects marginalized group. But given that, we also need to remember that it can affect anyone. So even white males could go through the burnout. So we need to make sure that we remind ourselves about that too. All right, so that is the definition of burnout. But what causes burnout in our community? So, different communities, there are some general characteristics that might yield burnout. But in our science communities, these are the things that I see as contributing to burnout. The first one is the pressure to succeed at everything. We are expected to do everything at the very best. There are a lot of intense intentional competition in order to be recognized within our peers. And part of it is due to current measures of success that we have, for example, the H index or winning grant rates and things like that. The next one is poor management, poor communication from management, having unrealistic expectations for us. Sometimes that also cause burnout. Dealing with poor managers who micromanage a lot can make the situation much worse and the feeling of exhaustion much worse. The next thing that is very prevalent in our field is the scarcity of resources and low success rates for proposals. So we have the so-called soft money problems. We have to constantly be writing proposals in order to cover ourselves, and that puts a lot of pressure on us. So understanding the burnout and its impact on individuals and work, of course, is essential to sustain a healthy workplace. But we have to make sure that we recognize that there are both individual levels and occupational levels to the impact. On the individual levels, the impact of burnout could be poorer quality of life, physical and mental health conditions, or poorer cognitive functions. On the occupational level, we can have talent loss, poorer work performance, poorer employee well-being, and less talent growth. But what can we do in order for burnout prevention and intervention? At 2024 AGU, we had a town hall dedicated to burnout, and we had an excellent set of panelists that they offered some ideas on how to do this prevention. and intervention. So in what comes next, I cover some of those and some of my personal perspective also on how we can do this mitigation. So first, I will talk about the personal mitigation strategies. So what are the things that we can do for ourselves in order to reduce burnout or mitigate burnout? The first one is to develop a better sense of ourselves. To know what triggers our levels of excessive stress and how to mitigate it. This is called emotional intelligence. So the basic two pillars of the first two pillars of emotional intelligence are self-awareness and self-regulation. So if we know what causes our extreme level of stress, then we can at least make ways in order to mitigate that. The next thing that I think is very helpful is prioritize our tasks. Well, we have to accept that, well, we are not superhuman. We have only 24 hours a day, and we have limited time and resources at hand, but cannot do everything that comes along our way. We have to focus on our strengths, what we can do best, and prioritize that way. And we have to accept that some of the things could remain undone. And that's the reality of life. We have to recognize that our career paths are unique to us. So we should not compare ourselves to others. We should not judge ourselves based on others' accomplishments and not to put unnecessary pressure on ourselves. This is the advice that actually has helped me a lot in my career, because I was constantly comparing myself to other people, and that was not healthy at all. The next thing is that we need to develop resilience in research. Oftentimes, when we do our work, we expect a specific outcome, and sometimes we don't get that. Well, the reason is that sometimes we make a mistake and we don't get what we expect to get, but sometimes it means that our expectation was not right in the first place, and that results in innovation and discovery. So it is okay to not get the expected result. It is okay to fail. This is always opens the base to explore other things. So that can also help. The next thing is to set a boundary between our professional and personal lives. We have to learn to say no when possible. It's a very difficult thing, and I still struggle to do that, but I think I've got a lot better in that. And it has been very helpful. And we should let go of fear of missing out, because there are always things that will come our way. And sometimes if we think strategically about what we can take on, that would be much better in our future. The last thing that I want to mention in this one is that we need to accept that we can only change what we can control. So we should not stress out on things that we don't have any control over. We have to pick our battles and make sure that we see what we can do in specific problems. And if there's something that is out of our control, then just let it go. It is the way it is. Sometimes life is that way. There is also some mitigation strategies on the higher level, that is the community and team levels. Well, for this, we have to remind ourselves that best burnout interventions do not often focus on burnout. And if sometimes there are some studies that have shown that if we focus some innovative approaches to mitigate burnout, they often hinder progress. So one thing that we can do on the community level is to consider changing the measures of success to allow people to excel at what they do. In our culture, right now, we celebrate the leaders, like the PI of big missions, for example. They're often celebrated. But in order for a big mission to happen, there are a lot of people that work that they are not necessarily in a leadership positions, but we have to recognize their contributions also. Not everyone can be a leader or needs to be a leader, let's put it this way, but their contributions still needs to be recognized. So we have to make sure that everyone should be in the right context to shine. If someone is not performing well in a team, maybe they are not given the right task for their skill set. Maybe we can find something else that they will be more effective and productive. The next thing is sharing experiences more openly, having honest conversations, normalizing these discussions, hearing from people who are struggling about doing things and in doing science in the community can often help other people to to ensure that they are not the only one struggling, and it's a tough problem that we are handling, and it's okay sometimes to not be okay. We also need to, within the teams and the community, create a culture of psychological safety where everyone can speak up freely without fear of judgment or discrimination, where they can easily push back on unrealistic expectation and not being judged. There needs to be effective membership in these in the teams to make sure that everyone can grow. The team leaders also need to respect and acknowledge the contributions of team members so that they can also improve their management skills for the leaders, the so-called soft skills, the social skills. For example, no micromanagement, giving more autonomy to team members, giving them a more sense of belonging and bringing meaning to the work they do, so that they don't feel the stress and burnout pressure. The last thing that I want to mention is that the mental health first aid, and it is something that I read in one of the articles in the Harvard Business Review, that was basically training managers to notice and recognize signs of mental health struggles for team members and connect them to support resources. If you see that someone is struggling, you need to know what are the first steps so that you can guide them through. And the last thing is that all of us should seek advice from burnout professionals. So of course, I am not a burnout professional. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm just a scientist trying to learn all of this. And I think we can significantly benefit from the old research that has been done on mental health and burnout in order to make things for ourselves better. So I hope that I have been able to convince you that in order to promote increased diversity, equity, and inclusion within our fields, it's essential that we acknowledge and actively confront and address the mental health challenges that are faced by our community. And when we recognize and address these challenges, then we can develop a deeper sense of self-awareness, which helps us to increase more authenticity and increase productivity, retention, and overall well-being. And I would like to end by this quote from Adam Grant's Hidden Potential, which says, without enjoyment, potential stays hidden. Thank you very much for your attention. And I hope that this opens up a good interactive discussion so that all of us can get more insight into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Romina. We have pretty some time for questions or maybe discussions, because this mental health theme, is like is both a personal experience, and I see sometimes it's also a common issue now. So if anyone want to speak up and share some thoughts or experiences, that's very welcome. And if you have a question, please also feel free to ask.
I'll also note we are recording. If anyone wants to participate in a discussion and have it not recorded, we can certainly turn it off. But just so
Or we can
aware.
trim the
Yeah,
the recordings as well. So
we can
yeah.
make sure that people's sensitive topics are not recorded. Oh, Lauren, go ahead.
Hey, everything's sensitive because my direct supervisor. No, I'm just kidding. No, but what I was gonna say is that oftentimes, like, I'll be really excited about a problem and research problem, and I'll work on it, and I get really into it, which is good. But then, like, I'll be up late. I won't be exercising. I'll be like working on this until midnight. I'll sleep badly. I guess what I'm saying is it becomes a problem when it's too late, and then I've already kind of messed up my whole cycle. So I don't know. Like, how do you sort of be a really curious researcher, but also know when to call it quits early?
Yeah, well, that's an excellent point. Some people actually in that workshop, we also in the National Academies workshop, someone mentioned this, and also in the town hall that we had, someone mentioned it, that if you are very passionate about your work, you will not burn out. But I do not agree with that. I totally agree with you. That's, sometimes if we are too passionate and, we want to work all the time and, we are driven by this curiosity and, we want to figure this out. So we let go of other aspects of our lives. So so in these cases, it is important for you to realize that what is your priority. If you exercise and you feel better about yourselves, then that is your priority first, because you have to be healthy first in order to do the work. And if we are not physically or mentally healthy, then it will be very hard we will not be very effective in doing what we do. So my answer is just see what you want from, what is more important on your for you to be more happy, and then you will be more productive that way. For some people, work is is all life. But and I mean, people are different. I'm not like that. I want to have some personal part for my thing, and it's important for me to exercise and important for me to sleep well in order to be able to ready when I go to work and do my job. That's an excellent question. Thank you very much for that.
I sort of have well, two things. One, input on Lauren's comment, and then also a question. Lauren, for me, again, everybody's different, but for me, that's sort of where my mental health and my neurodiversity butt heads. I get really hyper-focused on things that I'm excited about, especially, and then it's hard for me to pull myself away. So there are some like behavioral management strategies or like coping mechanisms or what have you that I've sort of learned to, like when it's really time to step back. Part of that is just getting outside help, reminders from coworkers. Okay, now it's time to stop and eat lunch. Okay, now it's time, like there's a lot of different strategies for that sort of thing. But again, that's also where, our understanding of each other and like coming together to support everyone's different sort of work habits or like avoidance of burnout and what other people need, and the open conversation about it can really help, because yeah, like different people need different things in order to not burn out. My question for Romina is, so you mentioned burnout specialists, burnout experts. Do you know if there are any that are provided to our community through like AGU or AAS or even like some of the funding agencies? Is there anybody that's like sort of not on call for us, but like that is known that we can reach out to as a community?
Yeah, so no, I don't know anyone. It would be good to get people within the community. What I have been the resource that I have been using myself is through LinkedIn. So I follow a lot of burnout specialists. Follow their advice. For example, they have all these, different perspective that they provide. One problem that I see, I mean, it's a great thing because, it's very general, of course, and, every discipline has its own specific challenges. So I think it will be very helpful if you find someone that is also familiar with the specific challenges within the research and academia, for example, so that they can also help us from that specific perspective. But right now, actually, no, I don't know anyone. I just follow people on LinkedIn and I just read, articles and things. But if you find someone, please let me know. And I will let you know if I happen to know someone who is also in the science, works in the science field. But so one thing that has actually mentioned to me was that all these training that we do, for example, the bystander training and things like that, well, it's important to get those sort of training from the professionals because they know exactly what it entails. And it's, people like us, they can bring some, just part of the element in the room. So our view of things is not perfect. So if you're training, on something, it's better to have a professional that specializes in that. So thankfully, this is not a burnout training session. So I can just, speak up my perspective and what I have learned. But we have to be careful on that as well.
Does anyone, I put this in chat, but, oh yeah, go ahead, Bill. You're muted.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess I have a quick comment, maybe not so much a question. So at least for me, in my particular chosen field, it seems like the burnout problem is structural and kind of baked in, right? Because as a theory and modeling person, I can't be PI of a giant mission with lots of funds and lots of stability. So what happens is that you end up having to, be successful on 2 or 3 smaller projects per year. And for me, I've been doing that for 30 years. So, burnout, it seems to me, is a rational end state of having to be on soft money for that long. In fact, one of the things that's always bugged me is I have a lot of friends that have regular faculty positions, friends and colleagues, and I get irrationally irritated because they have salaries, right? And the grant is kind of like, oh, cool, summer salary, right? So I'm like, so I guess my question is how do you deal with the structural problems of that type of career choice? I mean, it could be just, that's what I chose to do, so live with it, right?
Yeah, I have very strong opinion actually about the soft money problem. I think it is very hard. Is definitely hard, and that introduces a lot of anxiety and stress on people who are completely on soft money. I can totally understand that, and I can relate to that. So here at Applied Physics Lab, we're not completely soft money. Some people say, some people are, completely on grants, but we also have missions, so we can get involved with missions. And, that helps quite a bit. However, I mean, satellite missions are also, they come and go. First of all, getting a mission concept actually to be selected for flight is a really big challenge. And people, spend a whole career, actually, many years in order to developing this sort of thing. And, there are only so much resources, so they don't get selected. And once it is flown, actually, you could lose your satellite. For example, this happened to ICON mission. that, you know, it was lost after 3 years. So so that brings, you know, even more uncertainty, because, you know, you think that you're covered and all of a sudden you're not. So, you know, all of the, I think in general, if we are, you know, on missions or on, you know, small grants, we are all struggling on this sort of thing, you know, to find coverage for ourselves. So everyone challenges is just, you know, it's a little bit different. For me personally, I spent many years, actually 3-4 years, developing mission concepts. None of them were successful, but, you know, they want to, we push, you know, for these leadership roles in missions and things. And, you know, as I said, like, we celebrate these sort of thing, but, you know, we put our early careers into this thing, and, you know, really thinking that, oh, it's, you know, the best if we can get a mission, but then you spend all this time and resources taking away from writing papers, writing, you know, grant proposals and things, and all of a sudden it's not selected, and, you know, you're left alone. So so I understand that being on soft money is completely, you know, it has very own challenges. It's difficult, but also satellite and, you know, mission route is also difficult. It has its own challenges as well. I appreciate the comment.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to imply that it's not stressful with big missions either. It's just I was referring to my own personal experience of having to.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, all of the things that we do is highly stressful. And but the thing is that we always want, you know, to be better. That's how we get, you know, we think that we will get the recognition by peers if we write more papers, if we have a higher H index, and if we are, you know, winning grants all the time. But the issue is that, you know, we have to make sure some of us work on things that may not result in publication for a long time. That doesn't mean that we are, you know, any less, you know, compared to other people. So our contribution still needs to be recognized, and that is the main culture change that I see personally, that we need to fix that first. And not to push everyone to be in a leadership position, because if everyone is a leader, then who is going to do the job? Someone has to do the job.
Yeah, I'll also note, again, in terms of writing grants and funding and being on soft money entirely, I mean, this is something that I think we all inherently know, but maybe we forget about in terms of like dealing with our colleagues, is that there's just not enough money for everyone to win their grants. You can have an excellent proposal that's not funded, and a lot of people do, and that's really disheartening. And that definitely is a contribution to burnout, when you put in all of this work and get really good feedback, but it still doesn't get you anywhere.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great point. So for that, I have some ideas about how to deal with that. And I don't know, some people might find it controversial, but I think there is also, so in our community, there is a stigma around mental health. There is also stigma around people leaving the field. And we look at it as a failure if someone leaves the field. But I think it's a great thing if someone leaves the field and do something else. We are in heliophysics, and we get a lot of skills, especially, you know, during our PhD, for example, in order to work on, you know, space-related problem in engineering side or on the science side. We have a lot of skills on data science, for example. People who have, you know, work on engineering, there is a lot of, you know, space commercial companies that they could go and work with. So the work will not be in the science, but they use their skills in order to apply to those sort of, you know, applications. So if you work with data analysis, like what I do, I mean, we are essentially data scientists. We have all the skills, needed to be a data scientist. And there are, virtually every application, like everything that we deal with in our lives requires, from advertising to healthcare to whatever, it requires a data science. So we can apply those skills to that. So it doesn't, I think we have to, and it's on the advisors actually to make sure that they give their students enough skills and give them this perspective that is perfectly okay to do something else, and they're not required and do not feel stuck that they have to remain in the field and do this forever. If we have that sort of mentality, maybe it will be easier for people to consider these outside jobs, and then we will not have this surplus of postdocs and researchers in the field as we have now. The rate that is going right now, I mean, things are not sustainable, of course. Every advisor has, 4 or 5 graduate students. They have, many postdocs, and then so they are all, bringing up new generation. Then people, we still have the people from mid-career and senior career people in the field. Even if you add, funding resources, there will still be more proposal. There will be more people coming. Instead of 5 students, there will be 10 students for each advisor. So obviously, we have to do something about it. And I think one simple thing is to just remove the stigma around leaving the field, and knowing that if you do that, that is perfectly all right, and that is actually a good thing. It means that you learn skills that could apply to something else, and that could be very rewarding. So actually, I was wondering, if nobody has any other questions, I was wondering what do you think, what other things do you think that causes burnout in our community, or what we can do in order to mitigate that?
Definitely publish or perish. Absolutely, publish or perish.
But how can we change it? I mean, publishing is important because it will give you, the legacy of what you did. But so what is the way around it?
Well, I think, I mean, again, there's a lot of structural things, and actually, so Barbara Thompson, earlier, well, I guess last year at this point, said that she actually thinks it's getting better institutionally, that like if you apply for a job at NASA, your publications are not the end all be all of you getting a position. But in terms of academia, at least by my experience, they absolutely, like that's what can hold people back who are great researchers. They just don't have the publication. So changing that system obviously is very difficult. I think it's something that's a long-term goal of, as those of us, those of y'all who are in academic positions and leadership and become able to change some of those expectations and rules within departments and institutions, that we can be the change that we want to see. It's just a matter of having the people who have that power to be on board with it.
Yeah.
Again, it's kind of a continuing the conversation and engaging more people, again, who are in those positions, maybe because they have plenty of publications.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a long-term goal, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd like to make a comment. This is Yiming Wang. This is about heliophysics in general, or solar physics. I think there's a problem with diminishing returns. When I got into the field, This was the late 1980s and the 1990s. That was when Ulysses was launched and SOHO. So when we got the new data, you could look at anything, then you see something new. And then it's easy to publish. But now, with more and more instruments, now I have, in my opinion, they're building too many instruments, and they're not. We need money to analyze the data. The data has come, there's so much data that nobody has looked at. But the problem, one of the problems now, as I see, even things like Parker, Solar Probe, and Solar Orbiter, I don't think they're finding some new things, but it's nothing like it was in the 1990s. And yet there are more and more people in the field, as you say. So there's everybody gets a smaller piece of the pie. And I think that's a problem. Anyway, I'm glad I got into the field 30 years ago and not now.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I know it's more difficult in order to come up with something that is, completely new and novel. So many of us work on incremental stuff, and even some missions could be incremental in a sense. I totally agree with that. Thank you for the comment. Matt, did you want to say something?
Me, Matt Hill?
Yes, Matthew. Yes.
Oh, no, I wasn't trying to say anything. I was trying
Okay.
to mute. Sorry. I must
Okay.
have
I thought that. Okay.
Thank you.
So I want to sort of follow up on Yiming's comment and maybe ask a question back. Certainly, I agree that it's probably a lot harder to discover new things now than it was 30 years ago. We know so much more now. But at the same time, there's still lots of open questions. And I agree that I think that we have lots of data that we haven't really looked at. Like we could mine so much more knowledge from the data that we have without needing new instruments, which is not to say we shouldn't build new instruments, but I think there's lots of information hidden in the data that we haven't discovered yet. How does that would seem to me to suggest that we need more people looking at what we have than fewer. So I'm just curious.
I think the problem is, in the beginning when we have the new data, so we find a lot of new things, but so we solve a lot of problems, but those are the easy problems. They're the problems you can solve just by having new data. And that leaves the very hard problems. And those very hard problems, it's sort of like in particle physics and other areas of theoretical physics. The easy problems have been solved. And it's the very hard one that very, very difficult to solve and require a lot of money to solve. So I think we have the same problem in heliophysics, at least solar physics.
Yeah, we have a lot of hard open science questions. Well,
So
the technology is advancing, so maybe we can get more, better innovative missions and better instruments, and yeah.
Bringing that back to the burnout topic, sorry, I can't remember who said this earlier, but the point that sometimes the work that we're doing takes a lot longer than, these are hard questions. It takes a long time to solve them. Maybe solving some of these problems isn't really possible on 3-year funding cycle timelines that lead to a lot of the stress that we've been talking about that can cause the burnout. And maybe we as a field need to start thinking about ways to advocate for different funding models so that we don't have to go through the existing
Yeah, I agree with you about the
proposal
funding.
cycle.
I agree with you about the funding, the way they fund, NASA funds things is completely stupid. I mean, I've submitted lots of, when I submit a proposal, I always assume it's going to be rejected. And and it usually is. And almost every time what they say is, this is a very interesting, important topic, but you haven't described step by step exactly what you're going to do. And if it's a very difficult problem, I have no idea exactly what I'm going to do in advance. So what they fund is very incremental science. You know, if you've already done the same thing for the last 20 years, and then you can say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and, you know, and give a lot of detail, and then say, oh, that's wonderful. And then they fund you. But if you try to do something that is, you know, kind of people know very little about, and then they say, oh, you haven't said exactly what you're going to do, and then they don't fund you. And sometimes I think it's better just to have a lottery. And I think, you know, the program officers, so they get, say, 100 proposals. You know, if they have some knowledge of the field, they could throw out maybe half of them, and then the rest 50 just, you know, pick a certain number at random. I think that will work just as well as the present system.
I mean, yeah, I kind of agree that there's not as much, there should be more emphasis on, you know, in panels on high risk, high reward proposals. I think that's what you're talking about, you know, as opposed to incremental proposals, which are easier to, you know, put a work plan in place, you know, that's might get higher reviews on panels. So, you know, that's something maybe that we could, you know, write a white paper on or something and try to convince NASA to put more towards high risk, high reward proposals, right?
Well, you know, the type of proposals that I'm talking about, that are there, I wouldn't call them high risk. I just say that I'm studying a problem where I don't know in advance exactly what I'm going to do, step by step, you know, and that doesn't mean it's very high risk. It just means that it's an interesting new, it's something new.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That's kind of, I guess, high risk, high reward is kind of NASA speak in some sense.
Yeah, so for missions, for example, they require that, you know, you close on all of your science objectives. If you know exactly you're going to close that, then what's the point of, you know, doing the mission if you know exactly what is you're going to observe? So that's a problem. I don't know. So so my history actually, proposal writing doesn't go very long back, but was there any time that they would, when was it introduced that it has to be, you know, specific science questions and closure strategies and things like that included in the proposal? Is it new or was it always like that?
It's sort of new. Back when I started in the late 80s and 90s, it was much easier to get funding. And you didn't have to go into all this paperwork, all this step, and, you know, data, whatever at the end, make the data available and stuff like that. It was a lot easier. And I'll tell you a funny story. My mentor supervisor in those days, so he would get funding from NASA like every 5 years. So what would happen, this was like early 80s. what would happen was that Bill Wagner at NASA headquarters would call him on the phone and say, Neil, how much money do you need right now for the next 3 years? So Neil would say certain amount, then he'd get the money. That was when there was much fewer people in the field, and NASA had a lot more money to, per fundee.
Yeah, I don't think we can ever go back to those times. I wish. But yeah, I think we have to encourage some people to consider some outside things more, and that might help relieve some of the pressure that we are under. I mean, some people I've had in conferences, for example, people coming to me and say, I don't want to do a postdoc. I don't want to write proposals, all the time. When I have a job, what should I do? Is it bad if I go out of the field? And I said, no, that is perfectly all right. You do, this particular work, you have a lot of skills on data analysis, so you can take it and, take it to somewhere else. And some of them actually, they follow my advice, and I'm really happy to see, because they're happy in what they do and they don't feel miserable. So sometimes working on proposals, you can enjoy working on proposals. You're excited about the work that you want to do. That's a good thing. But if you have to do it, if you feel like you have to do it, and that's why you do it, then that introduces some issues.
Thank you, Romina. I think we are at the whole hour now, and thank you, Romina, and thank you for everyone for like interesting discussion on this topic. I think the discussion should continue like somewhere, and should keep getting the attention from the field and community. Yeah, but not today. We are at the hour now, so I'm glad many of you participated in the discussion. I hope people will keep on thinking and discussing about these issues. They are important for our community and for everyone personally. And as said, the recording will be put online, but if you are concerned of anything that being said, we can trim the recording and just send us a request. And if you want any follow-up discussion or something, you can also we can do it by email. So thank you, Romina, again, and hope to see everyone next month's seminar.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure to be here and meeting a lot of you here. Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day. Bye.
Thank you.